Good evening and welcome to the December 4th meeting of the Glenville Town Board. Please rise for the invocation and pledge of allegiance. I ask that you join me in prayer. Dear Lord, we meet here today in your presence. You are our source, our origin. Your Spirit binds us together in respect, dignity, and concern for each other. Gather our community together now and help us to join in service to this town. Give us the grace to look beyond our divisions, to find common ground, and to do the work of the people. Show us the continuity of our actions, those of the past, the present, and the future. Guide us to see the oneness to which all your people belong. We gather here to extend that thread that binds together in our work and in our fellowship. We ask this in your name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please call the roll. Here.
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 Here. We have a somewhat busy agenda tonight. We do have a few add-ons I want to point out. Add-on 1 is a resolution authorizing the purchase of a vehicle. Add-on 2 is a resolution authorizing the purchase of a marked police vehicle. Resolution 3 is appointing a position for deputy receiver of taxes, and then there's an add-on for a public hearing is add-on 4. So there will be some add-ons tonight as we get through. I'd like to start tonight with town council reports, as usual on the left with Councilman Graham.
Just one item, Mr. Supervisor. We met with some candidates that are here to, we have some vacancies in the assessor's office and met with some candidates, highly qualified candidates, and the next step is to review those interviews and possibly have those positions filled soon.
Great. Thank you. Councilwoman Rosowski.
Only that we are on our second pass through the town with our LEAF program. We are currently on the east side of upper part of Route 50. If you haven't yet gotten your leaves to the curb and would like to do so, you can check the town's website to see where we're going to be and where we currently are, so we can get those up for you. That's all. Thank you.
Councilman Blunt.
Nothing, Mr. Supervisor.
Councilman Pillavani.
No reporters.
Okay, excellent. Then we move on to the next item is a public hearing, which is item number 5, public hearing to hear all persons interested in proposed local law of 2013 adding chapter 6 supervisor to the code of the town of Glenville. Before we begin the public hearing, before I open the public hearing, I have a statement to read. Council is not here tonight, but I was asked to read this statement by council. And then I'll do a fairly short presentation so everyone clearly understands the proposal, and then we'll open it up to public comment. So the statement this evening is as follows. The town of Glenville duly published notice of this public hearing and placed on the town website the agenda for this board meeting, which included this public hearing. Certain technical objections have been made with regard to the contents of the published notice. We believe there was substantial compliance with the legal requirements, particularly in light of the media coverage given to this matter, and also based upon the information disseminated by the town with regard to the sum and substance of this proposal. We will therefore proceed with the public hearing tonight. Given the number of people in attendance here, we believe that it is clear and there was adequate notice received by the public with regard to this hearing. Moreover, it would be unfair for those here tonight not to proceed with this hearing. However, the board desires to keep this public hearing open until the 18th to ensure that every resident wishing to be heard has every opportunity to do so. At the conclusion of the comments of this public hearing, the public hearing will be adjourned tonight and continued on the 18th. We ask that you limit your comments tonight to 3 minutes, since you will have an opportunity to submit written comments to the board through the clerk's office for the next 2 weeks. Those written comments will be included in the record. So, this will be an ongoing process, as you just heard. Now, let me take a moment to go briefly through what the proposal is for the evening. So, of course, we don't have a question and answer period, so this kind of takes care of some of the questions prior to the comments. And so I'd like to take a moment to address the public directly. We held, as many of you know, an informational meeting this past Monday at the Senior Center. It was a question and answer period that gave the residents an opportunity to hear the proposal, ask questions, and get answers. So for the few of you that were there, I apologize, we have to sit through some of it again, but for those of you who weren't, it will be I think, valuable time spent. I'd like to address, first and foremost, there's been a lot of discussion around this, and there's a lot to really address, but the first thing I want to address is the timing of the proposal. There's been some questions about that from some of our residents. Some have asked questions relating to the timing and speed at which this proposal was brought forward, and that's a fair question. Some of it can be answered by referring to the laws of New York State relating to local governments and budget adoption. But first, it's important to note that the Director of Operations informed the board of his final decision to retire on November 6th. That was his first opportunity to address the board. As you know, the board cannot just meet outside of its publicly scheduled town board meetings. The board discussed options during the executive session that evening. Very quickly, the board started to coalesce around the ideas of restoring the supervisor back to his traditional role prior to a previous administration with a salary that makes it possible to be a full-time job. No final decisions were made that evening. The board was fairly prepared for the decision, however, since it has been well known that the board has been more desirous of a model for some time that included a full-time supervisor and was discussed over the years. I first raised the idea in my 2009 campaign for supervisor while running against Supervisor Quinn. And I again mentioned it in a public forum during this year's election on October 23rd when I stated that the town needed a full-time supervisor. In fact, my opponent in this past election also stated that she would consider making it a full-time position in the Times Union article dated October 31st, 2013. There seemed to be general agreement that this should be a full-time position by both candidates and this town board. The board again met for a work session on November 13th and finalized this decision to proceed. The budget by state law needs to be adopted by the 20th of November 2013, and the board prepared an amendment to the preliminary budget to reflect this change in the final adopted budget. This amendment was needed to create the allocation in the budget, but it did not alone enact the change. A local law is needed to amend the salaries of elected officials when they change from the preliminary budget to the final. This is a step we could have avoided if we were sure of the retirement prior to the adoption of the preliminary budget in October, but we were not sure at that time, and therefore a change was not made at that time. As soon as the board made its decision on November 13th, in the interest of full and open disclosure, I called the media immediately on the morning of November 14th to inform them of the board's decision. I told the reporter that the public ought to know that the board intends to do what the board intends to do before the board considered the budget amendment on Wednesday, and that the board was desirous of giving the public as much opportunity as possible to comment on the decision during the privilege of the floor at the November 20th board meeting. There's a full week notice that was going to occur. The board also passed a resolution at that meeting calling for a local law, a public hearing for local law to amend the salary of the supervisor to reflect the change. The local law process provides for the opportunity of further resident comment at a public hearing that will be held obviously tonight. The board has provided the public opportunity to comment on this proposal over the past month and has scheduled an additional public hearing, a public forum above and beyond the requirement that was held December 2nd to answer all questions relating to the local law. The public's input opportunities are summarized as this. November 20th, privilege of the floor. December 2nd, open community forum with question and answer. December 4th, public hearing to be continued to the December 18th board meeting. Once the public hearing is held and closed, the law will take effect in 45 days, barring a permissive referendum. It's important to note that I and the board held also open to the public, who was well noticed and invited, 3 budget forums prior to the budget submission this past fall, where although the direct proposal was not discussed, the challenge of the coming retirements were in fact, and that the new models will be explored across all departments as they happen in 2014. It was not appropriate for me or any member of this board to discuss an individual or any employee's potential or possible plans for retirement in a public forum. But to the extent possible, I and this board shared any potential for significant retirements in 2014. We shared the information we could as soon as we could. But it was not going to be the policy of me or this board to talk about an individual in a public forum for campaign or political cover. That wasn't going to happen. It never will happen as long as I'm supervisor. We acted in the most appropriate manner possible. Now that addresses the timing issue and why it is what it is. I want to take a minute to just go over the restructuring proposal, because I think when we talk about the merits of this proposal, that's what most people are interested in learning about. So the preliminary budget, as we talked about, has a 2014 budget, some budget numbers. And I just want to put some numbers up here because I think sometimes it's easy to see, and I know you guys already know these, so I apologize for kind of having, you can't see them. But the 14 budget as adopted or as proposed had for Jamie McFarland, who is our Director of Operations, a full-time salary of $84,200. Full-time. It had me, where I have been, and I think the position has been for some time, at $19,152. Now, what's a little odd here is we could put this, we could put this, we could put, really, elected officials, I think we all understand, can work an hour or they can work 80 hours. What the board controls is not the time. The board controls is the compensation. So there is no real, when we talk about full-time, part-time, they're really misnomers. They're really not what we should be talking about. Also in my budget for 2014, as has been there for the past 4 years, and at times utilized, is a part-time position for a CS as confidential secretary. The supervisor can appoint a confidential secretary to help run the operations within the department. Over my tenure, my first 4 years, it's been filled maybe not even, roughly less than half the time. So it's always been in the budget. We had somebody there. Frankly, it's hard to find someone to work for $10,000. It's been a challenge. But right now, that's the budget. So that comes up to $113,352 in administrative costs. Our proposed restructure would essentially, and I'll get into this in a few minutes as to why I asked Jamie to consider coming back. Essentially almost flip this. We're going to take away the raise that Jamie was going to get. And so my proposal is to have Jamie come in and truly be a part-time. And then I propose to go to the 2013 salary of Jamie, not taking, this 14 raise. And then that would be a true, however you want to say it. I've asked the board, and of course the board challenged me when I brought this proposal forward, said, well, okay, it's budget neutral, but where's the savings? We have some savings, which we're going to get into on Social Security and pension here. We have some savings, obviously, in a reduction of what Jamie would have made if he stayed on in 2014. But we're going to eliminate this because I said to the board, we can, Jamie and I, if this works, this is what's accepted, we can administer the office without administrative support. We'll make it work. We'll figure it out. It's not a big deal. So our savings is $16,000 savings, bringing the cost of administration down to 102, 152. So we're saving from the 113 to the 102. And then a few other things. So let me just put this up here so we keep this in the top of our heads. I hope whiteboarding is okay for you guys. It helps me a lot when I'm trying to keep things straight. Of course, you got to press really hard to erase. So that's kind of the proposal. Sorry, anything that takes 20 minutes to erase. We got to get one of those sprayers. Get my workout. So that's kind of where we are. This is 13 numbers. This would be 14 numbers if this goes through. Okay. So then I thought it would make a little bit of sense to figure out, well, okay, how did we get here? How has it been done? Really, because a lot of people have made comments about, well, you're fundamentally changing the way government works and things like this. And that's really not the case when you look historically at the position. So I want to go back to, don't have the dates down, but Clarence Mosier was the supervisor, so we'll call it the Mosier administration. And he basically, he made 14, almost 15,000, and considered, part-time pay, but talking to Clarence and the people that he worked with, typically worked 50 or 60 hours a week. That was not uncommon for what he did. Now, Clarence was a retired individual. He had other forms of income. This worked perfectly for him. So that was great. And then we went from Mosier years to the Quinn years. And Frank, Supervisor Quinn, had that. Again, I'm not going to put full part-time because, it's elected official. That's what they do. But what they brought in this time frame was an administrator. Okay, so the administrator had a salary ranging, starting at 90 in this person's tenure to 96. And so that administrator took on many of the duties, and we'll get into that in just a few minutes. But we also had Jamie McFarland on the roll, and he was making at this time $65,000. Okay, and he was doing HR, parks, IT, senior center, and a few other things. And he was on there. So when you add this administration up here, it was 177. And then you have the Ketzley first term, 1T. And we came in this board and said, well, we're not really thinking this makes a lot of sense to us. It worked for this administration, it's not working for us. We didn't like the administration, the way this was structured. So we went back. I was still at 19, and I'm rounding now, just so you're clear. We eliminated that. Jamie in his first year stayed where he was, and then in 11, we started bumping him, and he ended where he is today, after a couple of years of raises, because he got more responsibility. And all of this work here went to me and Jamie. Okay, so what you had here, and it's important because this is where people tend to get a little tripped up. Where are all these jobs going? What you had in these years is 3 people. What you had here is 2 people. One of these jobs got reallocated down here. Now what I will call Ketzley 2T, second term, is we're asking to allow a flip, again, of salaries after we found the savings of about 130,000 eliminating this position with benefits and everything else, is essentially go back to having the supervisor as the full-time, as traditionally have been, but keeping Jamie in a part-time position because it works for a variety of reasons. Number one, we have all these things here that never, ever was part of a supervisor's role or part of the administrator's role. That's a critical point. That's something that we have to realize. These jobs are going to go somewhere at some point. And we'll get to that in a few minutes as to where those jobs may ultimately end up. So, I got to erase again. So, upward pause. All right, so let's talk about operating costs, because I think that's also critically important when we look at this proposal as we compare it. This factor was looked at by the board when we proposed this change, and we looked at the budget supervisors in similar towns and how Glenville operates. Glenville generally operates its departments across the board at lower levels than other towns, traditionally. But just for this purpose tonight, we're going to look at the supervisor's office. So if you look at similar towns around us in particular, if you look at Clifton Park. And Clifton Park has a full-time supervisor, and he's at about 95 or so now. But he also has in his office an additional $110,000 worth of staffers supporting the administration of that office. So all told, Clifton Park has the 205, right? Okay. Gilderland, another town very similar to us. That supervisor has a salary of, and believe it or not, $109,000, which is kind of crazy. But he also has an additional $50,000 in support staff within his office, so he's up to, say, 160 roughly. You have Bethlehem. Believe it or not, 110,000. He also has an additional 52,000 in support staff. So, just rough numbers here. Rotterdam, where you have a part-time supervisor, who incidentally is retired, has a pension, and is also a professor at the county college. So I'm not sure he has the time to be full-time. But his office has an additional $95,000 in support staffers, so giving him 108. And then you have Glenville, where we would ask to do this for 102 between the two of us, which is below where many of the towns similar to our situation are. I also want to add in Clifton Park, Colony, which is a big town, and Gilderland employs directors of parks and compensation in the range between 55 and 90. So what these figures don't include is what does include in Glenville: administrator of parks, HR, and IT. So even if Jamie were to come on board, if this proposal is accepted, at 19, the Rotterdam Director of Parks, part-time Director of Parks, is at 30. $1,000. Jamie will be coming on for parks, seniors, IT, something else. Odds and ends. So even at that, that's a bargain. I think it's important to look at that comparatively speaking, because I think it puts it in perspective as to what we're trying to do and the savings we're still trying to achieve going forward. What we're doing with this proposal is the same thing we've been doing proposals across the town for the past 4 years. Every time there's a change in the department, we try to find a way to save money and gain efficiencies. And I think this kind of spells that out. Now, so some have asked to this point, why do we need to keep the Director of Operations on at part-time? And that necessarily wouldn't be the position, but why would Jamie McFarland need to stay on part-time? As I've stated before, about 25% of our staff are eligible to retire in 2014. Additionally, we have another 11 employees who may leave the town if the county's dispatch center opens as planned this year. That creates an additional challenge as we try to restructure much of the dispatch work that will stay within the town. All told, about 1/3 of our workforce will be impacted this year. This is a year where we need stability in our top management team. This proposal keeps the top management team intact, only suggests to swap out the Director of Operations pay and the supervisor's pay, gains significant operational efficiency, and saves money. This proposed structure allows the supervisor to focus on the operational changes ahead, along with the board, ensures the policies of a strong economic development and fiscal stability policy stay in place well into the future, restores the natural duties and responsibilities as granted by state law back to an elected supervisor, and eliminates the extra layer of government that a hired town administrator created. So that's the proposal in a nutshell, with the savings, the efficiencies. I want to take one more moment just to address a few things that keep coming up from a few people. But it's important because if a few people keep asking the question, then maybe many of you have the same question. And it surrounds the job description. I, for a while now, have said that the job description is very clearly spelled out in state law. Section 52 of state law. Now, I'm only going to hit some of the highlights so that people understand what the role of the supervisor is in a suburban town. Seems to be some confusion about that. And it reads simply, the supervisor shall be the chief executive officer of a suburban town and the head of the administrative branch of the town government. He shall be responsible for the proper administration of town affairs, law enforcement, and the maintenance of peace and order in the town. He shall appoint, add at pleasure, and remove a director of finance who shall assist the supervisor in preparing the preliminary budget and all capital budgets. And if any, in the administration of other fiscal operations of the town for which the supervisor is directly responsible. On the basis of estimates submitted by him or to him by departments, agencies, and officers of the town, prepare annually the preliminary budget and submit it to the town board, and be responsible for the administration of the annual budget after the adoption by the town board, and be responsible for recommending any modifications, transfers, and anything between appropriations in such budget during the fiscal year. That's the CFO role. Where the town board has by local law established a capital budget procedure, we don't have that, so I'll skip that. Number 4, bring removal charges against the appointed heads and deputy heads of any department of the town for a hearing. Approve with transfer of personnel in and among agencies and departments of the town. Number 6, provide for the direct and internal organization within individual town departments or agencies. Keep the town board informed generally concerning town affairs and of the financial condition and future needs of the town, and to make such recommendations as may seem to him desirable. having to perform the functions, duties, the supervisor will have all those functions, powers, and duties specifically granted in this article. That's the description. Clearly states CEO, CFO, responsible for daily administration of the town. Now we're going to go just really quickly, briefly to the town code. Because in 1993, the town administrator was created in the town code. And so I want to just read the difference between the town administrator and the town supervisor. There seems to be quite a bit of confusion about that. So this was created on February 3rd, 1993, Chapter 5 of the Town Code. We're just going to read a few brief passages. The town board specifically desires to act by local law in order to establish the position of town administrator and to delegate certain powers and duties to that office and to provide for the appointments. The town board recognizes that the supervisor is the chief executive officer of the town of Glenville, a suburban town, and is the head of the administrative branch of the town government. The town board further recognizes that it is the legislative branch of the town of Glenville. The town board recognizes the powers of the supervisor and the powers of the town board are not being transferred to the town administrator. This chapter does not attempt to make such transfer or in any way diminish the powers of the town supervisor and the town board, but rather intended to delegate the powers to the town administrator, subject to the supervision and control of the town board and the supervisor. Duties and responsibilities. There shall be established a position of town administrator for the town of Glenville who should directly be responsible in coordination with the supervisor. The town administrator shall perform such delegated duties as may be assigned by the town board. By resolution, the town board may assign, modify, or revoke certain administrative duties of the town administrator. Section 5.7, without divesting the supervisor of his or her inherent administrative and statutory functions of the town board, of its inherent legislative and statutory functions, as may be provided by law, and without curtailing, transferring, diminishing the powers of any elected official of the town of Glenville, the town administrator shall be responsible for the day-to-day administration of town government. Among the powers and duties that may be conferred upon the town administrator are: assist the supervisor in day-to-day administration of the town government. At the direction of the supervisor, coordinate and integrate the administrative and managerial activities of the town offices, departments, boards, commissions, and committees. Perform administrative and managerial analysis at the operations of the certain town offices. Coordinating with the supervisor, implement methods and procedures for improving the operations of town offices, departments, boards, committees. Assist the supervisor in directing the supervision of the personnel, labor relations, and human resources of the town. Work with all employees within the town to provide the efficient administration of town government. And then there's a bunch of assist the supervisor in carrying out his responsibility in proper administration of town affairs, assist the supervisor in bringing removal charges against appointed heads and deputies, assist the supervisor in making recommendations for the transfer of personnel, assist the supervisor in providing for the direction of internal organization of departments, and finally, assist the supervisor in keeping the town board informed generally concerning the affairs and financial condition of the town. Section 5.8, nothing contained herein shall permit or authorize the divestiture from an elected official of the town of Glenville, the town board, from the functional powers and duties that are granted. The history of that position was brought out in 1993. I did a little research and found a former supervisor, Wayne Wagner, wrote a letter to the editor. Now, it seems to be a common theme. This supervisor had a problem with the editors at the Gazette because he was responding to an editorial they wrote against him. And it was on January 26, 1994. Wayne Wagner, a new supervisor at the time, wrote, "The town administrator is another bureaucrat. The town administrator comes between the department heads and the elected officials. The town administrator comes between the people and the elected officials. The town administrator is not needed when you have a strong, effective, elected supervisor. State law is very clear. that the town supervisor is the chief executive officer. He did conclude that he can do this job at salaries that were shown before because he would, quote, because he is fortunate enough to be semi-retired and own a few businesses. I'm neither semi-retired nor own any businesses. So it doesn't quite, I don't have the same situation he has. He then dismissed the town administrator and took on the role himself. And so we fast forward a little bit and we come to date and time here in local government. And this was at the March 21st meeting, 2007, of the town board, when the town administrator was reauthorized. And I just want to read a quote from the minutes of that meeting. And just to point out, that administrator, that $90,000 of new spending, did not go through a public hearing. It did not go to the people for comment. It fundamentally changed the way we do business in this town and the way this government acts, but it did not go to public comment. And here's the quote from then Supervisor Frank Quinn. One of the key things, I think I can speak for all of our board members, is that we are in effect reactivating the position of Chief Operating Officer. If you will picture in your mind's eye a $16 million operation with 14 departments and no COO and no CEO, so you've got 14 departments reporting to the board of directors who are obviously part-time, and therefore to improve the synchronization, integration, communication, coordination activities that is what we're doing with this position. So I think what we've kind of established here for people who asked this question a couple times over, the supervisor has the responsibility for these duties. The town administrator was inserted into the organizational chart to take some of those duties. We eliminated the town administrator 4 years ago, and we asked Jamie to help with some of those duties. Jamie is now leaving. We have two options. We can reinsert town administrator, a COO position, at, I will submit to you, additional costs. We saw the higher costs that it created previously. Or as this board desires, we can put the elected official back directly in line with the people at a lower cost and restore the duties of supervisor. The key point in this, if we decide to go with hiring someone new, we are adding a layer and we are not diminishing the supervisor's role. All we're doing, and remember all those assists, all we're doing is hiring someone to assist in place of me being here. It is that simple. There is no really anything more I can do to make it clearer than that. That's the proposal. And so with that, I will return to my seat and open the public hearing. And I thank you all for your patience, your attention, your listening to this. It's obviously a very important issue to all of us, town board, myself, the staff, the residents, and I'm glad you all came here tonight because I think it's important to be heard on the matter. So, give me just a moment to return to my seat. See, when our council doesn't show up, I have to do all the legal work. So, it's okay to laugh. So we're going to open the public hearing. There are some people who signed up under privilege of the floor that I think are really here for the public hearing. So I'll start with that. Franklin put number 5. Number 5 is the public hearing. So Mr. Quinn, you are the first one signed up. Yes. Yes, you are. Just reminding people that I gotta get my stopwatch. For consistency, we're going with 3 minutes for everybody. And just don't start.
How many minutes, sir?
3. Because you have opportunity to submit written to the board.
Oh, thank you.
So let me reset here. Again, anytime you're ready, Mr. Quinn.
Okay, you ready?
Yes.
As you know, Frank Quinn, 1886 Ridge Road. Thank you for the Monday night meeting. It was informative. That was a good idea. It's a good idea to extend
the public hearing as we go. 3 minutes, as you know, breaks the long-term standing tradition of the town board. As people know, and I'm addressing the whole board, okay? As you know, I had the job for 4 years. I was on the board 4 years before that. And given the facts that we know from all of the different meetings, and you're about to pass this resolution, if not tonight, then at the later date. This changes the duties. It changes the specific daily duties of the town supervisor. Director of operations duties that were all listed up here, he's now responsible. You change the pay accordingly, that's obviously makes sense. You give the town supervisor tasks and duties without providing a written job description. One that specifies for those tasks and duties, right, the task, conditions, and standards and for job performance. I don't know anybody who hires anybody for a full-time position that doesn't do that for any business. So if we had those, both the board and the citizens would have criteria to evaluate the performance of somebody. So how you have a chief executive with all these new duties that were spelled out before, as you saw, without a job description doesn't make sense. The board gives the job to an elected official. Now this is a guaranteed job because this elected official is elected for 4 years, so you can't fire him, you can't discipline him for the next 4 years. You give the town supervisor job to a man who, Chris, by his own administration and admissions, I should say, is unemployed, has no prior training or supervisory experience in many of these areas he just wrote up here, has responsibility for a totally unionized workforce, and you give it at a salary of $83,000, which for 4 years, because you can't fire him or anything else as an elected official, means you're giving it to him for $332,000 guaranteed. So to me, board, if you go through with this, and if you vote this tonight or the next time, without making certain critical changes, i.e. job descriptions, written tasks, conditions, and standards for all these jobs that were listed up here, if you don't have your own new town policies and procedures that govern the jobs and the tasks that need to be done and job performance, and the town, what you're really doing is giving the town supervisor, in this case it's Chris, it could be anybody, you're giving that town supervisor a big, fat, beautiful Christmas present. A guaranteed 4-year job without a job description, without performance standards. This board will not be, in my opinion, effectively performing its fiduciary responsibilities for the citizens. So I recommend strongly you make those changes. You can amend anything that you've got in front of you in many ways. You can make those amendments.
I just want to ask you to summarize.
All right. You can amend it to do all the things I was talking about. You could also keep your director of operations because we all know in the budget it's a wash. We're not talking about big savings because with or without the director of operations, that's a wash. So give the citizens a chance, put it on a vote, and put it out there for the people. Thank you.
Thank you. I do want to correct one thing that you said I'm not employed. That's not true. So I just wish that we would please keep the facts straight if we're going to have this. I'm not unemployed.
That's what you told me Monday night.
No, that's not what I said Monday night. That's not what I said. Next person on the list is Kate Toombs.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. When I first came to Glenville, I was surprised, frankly, that the supervisor's position was not full-time. But as I've worked in different volunteer capacities, I've come to recognize that, in fact, it's the dedication of various employees who are not elected that has allowed the supervisor to maintain that part-time position. I have a couple of thoughts. I think Jamie McFarland has been a bargain for the town at $83,000. I think we will have a hard time replacing him. He comes to that position not as a fresh employee, but he came to that position after 20 years, more than 20 years of employment with the town. He had tremendous continuity. He's been in this position or similar lower positions through numerous administrations, time of turmoil, because he was not an elected official. I believe he brought stability to human resources and within the departments. And I look at this and just keeping it brief, I do think a referendum should be had. I really don't have a problem with Chris Catsley doing this job for a year, but I think it requires a more detailed, thorough survey or consideration of what part of the job should be elected and what part is better to carry over. If we had a new supervisor every 4 years, and our CEO was turned over every 4 years, I just can't imagine, but that would create great turmoil within the town employees. And so I would ask that the board go forward with a referendum, have a period of study and greater consideration of what parts of the job require greater stability versus the responsiveness to the day-to-day needs of our townspeople. Thank you.
Thank you. The next person who signed up is Judy Breitmeyer.
And thank you for letting me speak too. I've lived in town of Glenville for 50 of my 53 years, so I'm very dedicated to this town. I have a problem with the process. I have a problem with how this happened, and I too believe that there should be a referendum so that the people in the town of Glenville can make that choice. I also have a problem that the information wasn't available online for people to see what this proposed resolution was. I went online to the town of Glenville's website to try to find the resolution and find exactly what we were talking about. I actually was at the information meeting on Monday, and they said that the agenda would be on there, which it was, but there was no resolution. I called the town clerk. I had a hard time getting through. I finally did, and she emailed it to me, but I didn't get it until about 10 minutes before this meeting. The resolution itself does change, and it calls for a full-time town supervisor. So the information that you shared, Chris, about part-time, full-time, this law, if it is enacted, will make the town supervisor's position full-time. I have it here in front of me, and it adds a new chapter to the code of the town of Glenville, and I think whenever we add a totally new chapter to our town code, that we should have the people in this town have a voice on whether they want it. So I totally believe there should be a referendum. I also have a little bit of an issue with, I also have an issue that there's the minutes. The last minutes that are posted on the website for this town board meeting is June of this year, and that's a problem. How can we as the town be able to make good choices if we don't know what's happening all the time in the meetings? I think that that's something that needs to be corrected. And finally, the information that you shared about the full-time and the salaries for those other towns, just for a point of reference, the town of Glenville is the smallest town of all of those that were shared by about 4,000 to 5,000 people when you look at the population. The one that comes closest is the town of Rotterdam that has 29,000. This is 2010 census info. So they have 29,000, but their density is 800 people per square mile, as opposed to the density in the town of Glenville, which is 500 per square mile. So that I think is it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? That's the last person who is signed up for this anyway. Anyone else who should be heard? Michelle Grace. We're now going to need to state your address because it's not on the list.
No problem. Michelle Graves, 38 Country Fair Lane. I thought you had it memorized by now. First thing that I have a problem with is the number. You keep saying 16,000. 113 minus 102, I see 11,000. And I don't see how we're going to save 16,000 because we're going to have to pay Jamie a pension and health benefits, and then we'll have to add in health benefits for you when you become a full-time employee. And it doesn't seem to make sense. And then when you're comparing full-time supervisor salaries, you seem to forget that there is a full-time supervisor in Schenectady County. You're comparing us to Saratoga County and Albany County, and their median income is about $20,000 more than us here in Glenville. In Glenville, the median salary is $52,300. Even in Niskayuna, where their median salary is $70,800, Mr. Landry only makes $53,800. So why are we going to pay our supervisor $83,000 when we make only $52,000? It just doesn't make sense to me at all. We have all of these inconsistencies, and it seems that nobody's comparing us to other towns in Schenectady County. We're going to all of a sudden have an $83,000 a year supervisor. I understand your points about needing more time to do the job. I just don't see where we're saving any money. It seems to me where it's going to cost us more money, and our tax bills are going to go up. Our median income is lower than these other towns, and it just, the numbers don't add up. I'm not seeing the numbers when you write down the numbers. It seems to me you're not adding on any job responsibilities based on the information shared on Monday. We're just quadrupling your salary and giving you health benefits. And it doesn't seem right to the residents of the town of Glenville. I don't get to quadruple my salary without taking on additional responsibilities. So I don't think that we should quadruple your salary. If you're going to become full-time, I understand that you would obviously need a raise in benefits, but not 4 times as much. I don't think that's right for the residents of the town, and if that's what's going to happen, then obviously we'll be starting our plan as Democrats for 4 years from now. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to be heard? Mr. Conklin.
My name is Andy Tomko. I live at 5 Drug Drive here in Glenville. I've been here for about 40 years. I don't have a problem with any of the numbers. That's not the issue. It's process, number one. Number two, it's experience of the candidates. Jamie did a great job, and it's been mentioned that he was here for 27 years. He had a lot of experience. When we have a new supervisor, the supervisor, I agree that Jamie can come on and switch and train you in all the different facets that's going to extend the job. Right now, when I've listened to the board members over the last couple of meetings, everyone works a lot more than 8 hours a week or something like that. You get called all times of day or night. I don't understand why we've had a town manager twice, I think 2 different times. There was a reason why the town supervisor and the board hired a person for $90,000, and then again, it's done a second time, because I think the job is overwhelming. If you guys go forward with this, I just want to make sure that we don't see something a year from now or 2 years from now saying that, well, it's overwhelming. We're a growing town. It's a great town. You guys have done a good job. But be careful that you're not reaching for too much. You're grabbing that brass ring, and you're going to find out that it's real heavy once you grab it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to be heard? Mrs. Burns Smith.
You know my name.
Mrs. Burns Smith.
My name is Kathy Burns Smith. I live at 24 Lillian Drive here in Glenville, in the house my husband grew up in. So the house has been owned by one family and a daughter-in-law. That's me. Like other people, I'm concerned with process. I think the basic approach is, why are we rushing into this? In Niskayuna, they took a year. The Supervisor Landry announced the proposal in 2000 and created a citizen committee to look into the change. You can do the same thing here. But I agree with others who have said this should go to public referendum. Let the people vote. And I also want to go on record, I'm very concerned that this public hearing was not noticed appropriately. The legal notice that appeared in the paper, I believe it was November 23rd, makes no mention of time, date, or location for this public hearing. And I don't believe the articles that appeared in the paper announcing it satisfy that requirement. Town law is pretty specific when it comes to announcing a public hearing. I'm really concerned that the town attorney is not here this evening to answer these questions. I know you read his statement. That's not the same as him being here.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to be heard on this matter? Sir, in the back.
Good evening, Mark Raven, 1 Tryon Avenue. You offered 2 options tonight for what might be done. Let me give you a third.
Could you speak up?
Oh, of course, my apologies. You offered 2 options this evening for what might be done. Allow me to give you a third option. That would be to retain Mr. McFarland at the part-time position, and with the board and Mr. McFarland and his experience, conduct a thorough series of interviews in a very, very tight job market, and find yourself another good individual to fill a position that's been held by Mr. McFarland and done so well for so long. That way, the 5 of you, supervisor and the town board members, would all remain part-time employees, would all have roughly the same bit of compensation, or a bit more, of course, goes to the supervisor. And that person would get a full year's worth of training from Mr. McFarland, albeit on a part-time basis. I do recognize the board, and I'm quite supportive of the fact that you extended the public hearing. I think that's a wonderful thing to do. I think the way you've handled this, by informing the media up front in November, and by tonight's presentation, I think, again, fine efforts, things that need to be done for people. I will make one point. There are a number of gentlemen here this evening who are veterans of our military, and I thank you for your service to our country. You all are also public servants. The 5 of you, when you ran for election to public office, knew what you were getting into. Well, maybe not. There's a lot of work. But you knew that this was to be public service to your community. This is not a career. I personally do not care 1 iota what you do in private industry, provided the fact that it be legal. That's my one concern. And I expect that it all is. I will know we've got somebody at the road and Half Moon who's no longer supervisor who, well, may have had a little problem with that according to allegations brought forth in our criminal system. And I am not asserting that's the case here. But you are public servants. And if you are multi-millionaires or unemployed, you knew what you were getting into. You knew the game. There is not an individual in this room who is working for someone else who can say, my financial situation is such that it has gone either to the negative because I've got unexpected costs, medical issues and the like, or I'm not making as much money, or I've been laid off, or I'm doing more work, therefore you have to pay me more. Nobody in this room working for somebody else, and a lot of people who run their own businesses don't have that opportunity.
I just asked you to summarize, Mr. Raven.
I thank you very much for your service, and I hope you'll remember that.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to be heard on this matter? Yes, sir.
My name is Steve Marsh. I live at 109 Houston Street in the Village of Scotia. In reading through the local law, I guess it's paragraph 6.3, talks about the salaries, the savings in salaries and benefits. I think I would like to suggest that we have a summary of what the board believes those savings to be in salaries and benefits. We've seen just, I would say, the raw numbers for salaries, but the true cost of any employee to an organization is salaries and benefits. So I would like to suggest that. Looking at paragraph 5, it says the special election shall be held no sooner than 60 days, but it doesn't give an end date. It doesn't have a requirement that it should be no sooner than 60 days, but shall not be more than 120. Leaves the possibility open that this could go on and on and on, when I think that the town would like to see some closure about this. It also talks about a valid petition. I've tried to look on the website, and I'm no internet hero, so my search skills may not be the best, but I couldn't find a definition of what constitutes a valid petition, what the criteria are. And if the criteria aren't posted, how is the public to know how to submit the petition to make it valid? It says that and also I was wondering, how do the criteria for determining this petition to be valid or invalid may conform or vary to the other petitions previously required for submission to the town? The other thing, it says that the town clerk shall make the determination. I would like to suggest that there be an inclusion that the town clerk has to make that determination in a certain amount of time. Again, because this is an issue that apparently concerns a lot of people, and I think it would be appropriate to put that in there. And then, is the decision of the town clerk final? Is there or should there be some kind of mechanism for appeal by the public, or review by the public, or review by somebody? Again, I don't know if this is the normal process for reviewing petitions. So I would like to offer some suggestions. I would like to suggest that the town create a page on the Glenville website dedicated to this issue. Because of the amount of concern of the public, I think it's warranted. I would like to suggest that on this page, the total amount of savings proposed are posted. I'd like to suggest that the page include what's called FAQs, or frequently asked questions, and base those questions on the questions that the public has submitted. Not just questions that people think might be answered.
Mr. Marsh, I just ask you to summarize.
Okay. I suggest that we put an end date into the resolution. We list the criteria for a valid petition. We put a time limit on how long the clerk has to determine validity. And finally, I suggest amending this local law to remove the condition for a petition and go directly to the vote. Because I believe that's what people here are conveying with their sentiments.
Thank you, Mr. Marsh. Anyone else wish to be heard on this matter? Yes.
Hi, my name is Kathy Bryson. I live at 346 Church Road. I just wanted clarity first. Do you mean that you're going to review until the 18th and then vote? Or are you voting tonight?
No, we're not voting tonight.
Okay, thank you. Well, I attended Monday evening. I thought it was very informational. Thank you for that. I was confused by the fact that a position was being removed and yet a job description wasn't different, etc. Gina pointed out that it's fundamentally the same job. So in thinking about that, I realized that one of the things that Mr. McFarland had was the 20 years of experience and some very specific skill sets that I then wondered, okay, if Supervisor Ketzley was overseeing all that, I would feel comfortable with. But should that position be removed, which I'm assuming you're also proposing that it's removed, when it's removed from the budget, the Director of Operations?
Again, not a question answer, but you know what, I'll address that in my comments.
Okay, thank you. But should that position be removed or things reallocated, my concerns related to the election and looking at candidates during the election would be the following skill sets. When I looked at your LinkedIn profile, I did not notice any work experience related to directly overseeing employees or managing a number of employees. Usually people list how many employees they've directly supervised, how many departments they've supervised. And also, very importantly, are the union contracts that work within our town and civil service law that applies to all these employees. So I'm confident that Mr. McFarland had those skill sets and the knowledge of those areas specifically. And I think that by removing that, although I realize that he can advise you, that's a concern of mine. So I wanted to share that. And again, simply with the process and the timing of events, it doesn't appear transparent, unfortunately. And I think that when you're a public representative, you need to make sure that there's no appearance that something that you may have been trying to mislead people or leave out information. And unfortunately, in the way that this has played out in terms of timing, and specifically that disturbed me that I know you took a leave of absence in September and you are not current, you still on leave of absence with your employer. But what that means is that from September till today, that this has been open and this is an open situation, and that makes me feel that you don't have a current full-time salary.
Yeah.
So
I asked you to summarize.
unfortunately, that plays into how this is playing out and how people perceive the situation.
I'll address that because that's not a fair
Thank you.
characterization. It's not a correct characterization. Anyone else wish to be heard? Sir?
Evening. Kurt Stone, 181 Browns Road. I'd like to first address a comment by a previous gentleman regarding the petitions. It might be advisable for town clerk possibly to pre-approve the wordings of a petition or to provide an example. Just a recommendation to answer his concerns. There were two issues at play here, but since we are here today, only one really remains. Should we hire a full-time town manager to assist the town supervisor, or make the town supervisor a full-time position? This is a practical as well as a political question, and how we got here today is irrelevant in answering this question. Supervisor responsibilities are constitutional. A referendum can't change that. The question is about the division of workload between a supervisor and an assistant. There are arguments for both schools of thought, but one has garnered general wider support than the other by both sides of the fence. We do have full-time Republican supervisors. We do have full-time Democrat supervisors, as we know in this unit. We're surrounded by many examples, all of which appear to cost more than in this plan. Also, Supervisor Kesley does not tell us that he wants to be a full-time supervisor in addition to other private and public full and part-time employment that appears to be the experience in this unit. He wants to serve the town full-time. He wants to serve one master, and that is us, the residents of Glenville. Boiled down, this debate is quite simple. I support the measure, which in fact does come with this referendum. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simone. Anyone else wish to be heard on this matter? Anyone else? Going once? Sir?
I'm Emil Jarzinski from Spring Road. I've been in, well, actually, I was remembering back to the first newspaper article that came out on this subject. And at the time, looking at it, it seemed to me, what a good idea. As I've learned in my career, 30 years with a major corporation, when there's a change, when a key staff member leaves, you need to react to be able to fill that, to fulfill your responsibilities, stay on budget, stay on schedule, deliver your deliverables. And it seemed to be such a perfect solution in that the duties all stay in the same office for now. Supervisor takes on more responsibilities. The fella with the experience stays on to help the transition. I said, those guys have a good solution. And it still makes sense to me. The thing I couldn't understand is all the follow-on uproar that went on. I think maybe it's too simple a solution. But to me, it seems to work. And once again, I filtered through my own experience. I said, well, do I really know this team? How well are they doing? And we did have a personal experience with the town. I recently got married. My wife had a question. When she moved here, she called the office and got a very courteous response, very timely. And she says, you know, that's a lot better than the city I came from. I never would have had that same experience. So I think we've got a good, solid administrative team in place. I think they have a fine solution, and it still makes sense to me.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else wish to be heard on this matter? Sir. Mr. Martin. Sorry, I didn't see you. I just saw your hand.
It's kind of hard to miss me sometimes. Hi, Jim Martin, town resident, 30 Banker Avenue, also a town board elect. And it's, you know, I think people who reviewed my qualifications during the campaign, if you happen to do so, I'm aware of my experience in local government. I've worked over 30 years in community economic development, both as a private consultant and as a public employee. And I've been a department head of 12, 13 people, where there's been a mix. As a matter of fact, I think it was 6 and 6, non-union and union. So I understand union contracts, and I understand all that goes on with labor negotiations. I've had grievances made against me as a department head. I've taken town residents, unfortunately, to court over alleged violations of town code. It's not a pleasant experience. And in my particular situation, I work for the town of Queensbury, which is remarkably similar to the town of Glenville, growing suburban township, almost the exact same population, rural in nature, density issues were brought up, I heard that mentioned earlier, remarkably similar. And in that situation, we did have a full-time supervisor, and I witnessed firsthand how that operated. There were complaints made. I mean, I was also the zoning administrator, not a popular position sometimes. Probably second only to the tax assessor. But anyhow, and I had people in my office who said, well, I'm very angry. I want to go see the supervisor. Let's go right on upstairs and do that. And you allow that kind of interaction when you have the supervisor in the building. And I just don't understand the resistance here. I've consulted to communities across the state. Some have village managers, town managers, city managers, what have you. And that it is in fact a bureaucratic layer. It is a barrier to the elected official. So I don't see, in terms of the aspect of this proposal, I don't see that as being anything but a positive, taking the chief elected official of this community and putting him in this building at least 40 hours a week. And if he's not here, he's probably out with a constituent, with a business development proposal or something of that nature on behalf of this community. So I don't see where this is a downside. Because you're right, we are public servants. And the closer we as public servants can be to the people, the better off the residents of this town will be. Not this town, the residents of this town, which are the most important aspect. And secondly, I think a point has been made that's not been emphasized enough. This is restoring what always was. And I think that idea of putting in that bureaucratic block or that barrier is not effective. And my closing thought will be, that's not the be-all and end-all either. I've seen in my work firsthand very bad, very poor village managers, town managers, city managers. It's not the be-all and end-all. That's all. Thank you.
Mr. Martin. Anyone else wish to be heard? Mr. Martin.
My name is Dave Lindsay. I live at 14 Red Coach Drive in the Village of Scotia. I did want to address a couple concerns as I was listening. One person suggested that there might be upheaval 4 years from now if another supervisor is elected. I couldn't disagree with that more. Supervisors and mayors are elected and defeated all the time without upheaval. It's part of the democratic process. If a person is doing a good job, as clearly this board and supervisor are, they're reelected. If they're not doing a good job, they're not reelected, and the new people come in and run things differently. As far as the interview process goes, I believe we've had a 4-year interview. And a few weeks ago, they were chosen to keep their positions. 4 years is a long time to have an interview, and it went pretty well. If you look at the Moody's rating, the New York State Comptroller's rating as to how the town is being run, it's actually one of the best in the state. As far as the process goes, I've been at all 3 of these. I hadn't been to all of them, but this is the 3rd one. And if certain people haven't been there for all of them, shame on you. As far as the repeal process, why would we need a repeal process? It's called election day. You either like them or you don't. If you don't like them, don't vote for them. If you do like them, keep them in office and going. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Mr. Lindsay. Anyone else wish to be heard on this matter? And once, only twice, public hearing is suspended until the 18th. I will respond at the supervisor's comments, obviously, since it's not a question and answer. Still have to be That's a different item. That's a different item. That's perfectly fair. The public hearing is closed. So, with that, we'll move on to a recognition ceremony. So after that, we will have privilege of the floor, and then we'll have the supervisor's comments to the board, which I'll respond to some of these questions and concerns at that time. So without any further ado, I would like to invite the folks up from the Veterans Hall, Mr. Simone. I will join you. What we'll do is we'll do the ceremony, then we'll ask the board to come down for a picture.
Good evening. I'm Chris Simone with Glenville's VFW Post 4660. Glenville's Community VFW Post 4660 is proud to announce that we participate in this year's VFW Voice of Democracy Audio Essay Contest. And that tonight we take great pleasure in honoring 3 high school students who demonstrated resolve and confidence in reflecting on this year's theme, Why I'm Optimistic About Our Nation's Future. In describing the VFW Voice of Democracy program, it's best to paraphrase from the contest website. The goodwill of the Veterans of Foreign Wars reaches far beyond the realm of veterans helping veterans. In fact, direct involvement with America's youth and communities has always been, always will be, the VFW priority. Each year, nearly 40,000 high school students from across the country enter the VFW's Voice of Democracy Audio Essay Competition to win a share of $2.2 million in educational scholarships and incentive awards. Knowing that a democratic society needs nurturing, the VFW established the Voice of Democracy program in 1947 to provide students grades 9 through 12 the opportunity to express themselves in regard to democratic ideals and principles. The national first place winner wins a $30,000 scholarship paid directly to the recipient's American university, college, or vocational technical school. Other national scholarships range from $1,000 to $16,000, and the first place winner from each state wins an all-expense paid trip to Washington, D.C. All entries must be submitted to their local VFW post for initial review and evaluation in areas of originality, content, and delivery. Each post may then forward one winner for every 15 entries to be submitted to the next level of review and evaluation, which in our case is VFW New York State Department. VFW Post 4660 was pleased to accept 45 entries, allowing us to send 3 winners to the next level of review. In addition, they will each be awarded a medal, certificate, and a modest cash prize of $300, $200, $100 for first, second, and third place. Regarding the 42 other entries, although they are not moving to the next level, they gave us great optimism about our nation's future. Glenville and the greater community around here is a great place to raise children, instilling in them the values our parents taught us. We're pleased to hear those values in all the audio essays. One last comment before we introduce our winners. Glenville's VFW Post 4660 is a small but active post of veterans helping veterans in our community. There is one thing that could assist us greatly in that mission, and that is more veterans, helping more veterans in our community. We welcome your membership. Larry Zeglin is our commander. We meet on the second Tuesday each month at the East Glenville Firehouse, and you can find us on the web at www.vfwpost4660. Commander Zeglin, will you please come forward? The post also invites Supervisor Kessler to join us in offering the town's congratulations. When you are called, I ask each of the winners to come forward to Commander Zeglin and then remain in front with us until the close of presentations for a photo or two. Our Voice of Democracy Audio Essay Contest winners are, third place, Lisa Humphrey. Second place, Aubrey Campilla. And finally, first place, Aaron Saucer.
Congratulations, Aaron. Outstanding. Thank you so much. Yes.
Board like to come down for a picture?
Apparently the boys don't know how to write, huh?
Can't comment on that.
Go girls.
Let me take one more.
There were some girls who were just better.
Got it? Okay, we will now move to the next item, privilege of the floor. We have a few people who have signed up, so we'll start with the sign-ups. And the first person that has signed up is, or maybe we'll wait, Mr. Bryson, before we need to clear out. If anyone who's leaving wishes to leave now, it'd probably be a good time. We're going to go to privilege of the floor. Thank you. First person who has signed up is Mr. Bryson. And again, you can wait for the...
Scott Bryson, 346 Church Road, Scotia, New York. I moved to Glenville approximately 16 years ago, and I was in the need of a good mechanic. I was told to go and be an H Auto, and I've been there going ever since. Mike Butka is fair, honest, and does good work. At least 3 businesses have tried to take off at the location at the bottom of Church Road, and all have failed since I have been living there. Mike's business is now thriving, and he is doing well. I hear that we're trying to put limits on B&H on the amount of cars that he can have in his lot. This will essentially kill his business. As the director of Bellevue and Baptist, I have taken all my company vehicles to him and my personal vehicle. Often we are forced to leave our vehicles there while we wait for parts. And if anybody's had a car repaired, they know what that is like. As a resident of Church Road, I am happy to have B&H at the bottom of the road. and I'm glad to make them part of our community. Please, as the board, do what it takes to leave B&H there. Let them have the ability to put as many cars as he deems to do there as his business grows, and he is doing very well in Glenville. The other thing that I would like to speak about is Joey Butka, the property and the road. I've heard many entertaining rumors about Joey Butka and the access to the property that he purchased. I'm going to go through a quick list, and I'm going to give you the truth. My house borders that road. I am closer than anybody else to the work that Joey Butka did creating an easement into his property. Number one, we'll speak about the culverts that Joey Butka had installed. In no way did they damage the creek, the pond, or anything thereafter. They actually helped dry out part of my backyard. I am the only person on that road who those culverts would affect. I'm the only one who has the creek going through their yard. That creek feeds the pond. Everybody else downstream is getting the overflow from the pond. The only thing that has affected that pond was Hurricane Irene, when I had an 8-foot river running down through the back of that yard. This summer, me and my daughter still caught all the crawdads out of that creek and used them as fishing bait, and she likes to put them in the aquarium and let them hang around. So those culverts had no harm at all. Number two, the gunshots at night I heard expressed here a couple board meetings ago. I woke up that night at 11:30 and I also looked out the window when I heard the loud shots. The neighbors to the right side of us are a young couple who moved to Glenville approximately maybe a year and a half ago. They were having one hell of a party. There was over 40 people out there. They had some fireworks, some bottle rockets and such. I turned around to my wife and said, good for them. It's nice to see some young folks having some fun in this town. The police did show up on the property on the other side, which is the easement that Mr. Butka did create, getting to his own property, but they didn't find anything because nobody was there. So the gunshots that you heard were the fireworks and the party going on the other side of the road. Third rumor we've heard rolling around is Joey and his friends with their fires, hanging out, just hanging out. I can hit him with a baseball from my house. He is on his property. They have been great neighbors. There's no loud music. Joey Butka creating that access road and enjoying that property has not been an issue at all. I live next to the road. Fourth rumor, the shooting range. It is closer to my house than any other house on Church Road. They do have a spot back there where they like to shoot. It is about 650 yards approximately directly behind my house. They've never shot at night. They have never shot in the morning. I see every car that goes up and down that easement that he built to his property. Joey Butka was very respectful. There were a lot of trees they took down that could have hit my house. Again, I have no issue, and there is no one closer to all this activity than myself. So I guess to close, I would say that I did not know Joey Butka, even though I've been doing business with his father for over 17 years, until he started to move in there. Well, now I can tell you that I kind of like him. He's been very respectful of our family and our property, and there's no house clear to all this stuff you hear going on Church Road. I do not want any problems with my neighbors, because I do know that there's a lot of chatter going on. But rumors and hearsay are dangerous. And that's why I'm here, because I keep hearing all these rumors and hearsay that are going on. And again, there's no house closer than mine, and that's not going on. I guess to close it up, Joey came to me a few weeks ago, or maybe a month or two ago, I'm not sure what he's saying, and he was having his property surveyed. He bought it. He has the right to have it surveyed. I told him I did that a few years ago, and here's a good starting point. Here's my stakes to buy my property. Unfortunately for Mr. Joe Buck, the property has been perceived as public space. There have been people back there with their dogs, riding bikes, hiking and hunting for years. It's his property. He purchased it. He bought it. As far as I can tell, he is not breaking any laws. He is respectful for everybody who is by the access road. So this board knows that's really what is going on. That's the truth. As for B&H, please do what you can. Don't limit success in Glenville. That's all I have. Thank you.
Next person we have on the list is Tom, is it Petrois? Tom Petrois?
I'll pass.
Pass. That's the last person we have on the list. Anyone else wish to be heard, privilege of the floor, sir?
Thank you. My name is Thomas Fong. I live in the Golden Church of Saginaw, 795 Saginaw Road. I have a building permit that was signed by Joey Bucka, and I talked to Joey. He's the owner of the property, and I asked him, listen, I know your dad. I used to do business with Mike. I don't disrespect Mike and let anything bad say about the man. But I do have a property right adjacent to his property. Now, the building permit says 8 and 4. 8 with license and 4 without license plates on. And all I've asked that man was, Joey, I went to him personally, and I asked him, please, don't let this property become a junkyard like your dad did down on Route 5, opposite the Navy Depot. And that kid right there told me, promise you, I promise you, I won't let my dad make that look like a junkyard. You go by, you drive by the church road in Saginaw, 23 cars parked in all different directions. It's just ridiculous. And I really believe it's knocked down my value of my home. So I'm not trying to put Mr. Buck out of business. This should be a fair and equal opportunity where he can go do what he wants to do, but leave my property value up. Be a friendly neighbor. That's all I ask. I even offered to pay for a tree line, so I wouldn't have to look at that. I haven't heard anything back on that. I just, you know, you have to do what you gotta do. I got the building permit right here, signed by Mr. Buck.
Can you get a copy of that building permit with my signature on it, please? I never signed it.
That's okay.
Let's see it.
And let's just keep this.
See it.
We can get a copy through the clerk if that's what we need to do.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to be heard tonight? Privilege of the floor. Once, going twice. Privilege of the floor is not closed. Move to supervisor's comments. No. Now you're gonna miss this. Some quick housekeeping, just real quick. Let you know what I've been up to the past couple of days. Had a few staff meetings. We talked to the staff at those meetings about getting the strategic plan together and presenting those to the department heads and liaisons so that we can work on that this work session. I'd like to really, with all that's going on, I understand, I'd like to really get some clarity on where we're going in 2014, regardless of anything else that's happening. But we do have to get our strategic plan going for that. I will be attending on the 10th, Local Government Council through CEG. They're putting together the legislative agenda for the towns. Right now, some of the legislative items on behalf of the towns include mandate relief. That's an oldie but goodie. More CHIPS money. Tom, you'll be happy with that one. Including and asking to exclude any emergency spending to be removed from the tax cap. So those are the legislative items that the Association of Towns that are currently looking at. If you have any others you would like to add, I can bring those to the meeting. We're going to have a working session on the 10th to finalize that agenda. met with the SBED, and one of the items on that meeting agenda was the READY funding. We were talking about what to do with READY funding, so that will be part of the strategic plan, but just so you know, this board should start thinking about what we should be doing with the READY funding. Also, I know Councilman Pitlavani will be working with the chief and the court justices, but we started to look at Joelle and Gretchen put out a memo about what kind of impact it's going to have on the court system if the UCC is taken out. So we've started to take those steps to look at reorganizing all of that. On the 25th of last month, met with Superintendent McGrath to discuss possible opportunities for the school and the town to work together on some projects. You know that they're going to be vacating the building that's in our town, Hostetler building. Began to talk about some ideas and thoughts on what we can probably do with that property and that land and help develop and market the property for them. The last thing we want is an empty building sitting there, because once it goes empty, it's already in rough enough shape. I took a tour of it. It's only going to get worse. So working with the superintendent, and we have additional meetings coming up on that. Also, we had a meeting with Mayor Katzberg on, again, some ideas going into 2014 of where we can work together as a town and a village, and so we have some of those ideas to talk about during the strategic plan. But it looks like a lot of cooperation all around here locally with local governments, and that's going to be important. So I just ask you to think about the strategic plan at the next work session. We'll talk about it, we'll bring it out, and see if we can start getting some ideas on paper. Also check with your, and I've been doing this as well, we're getting the membership for the different committees in shape for 2014. So there's some vacancies there. We're starting some recruitment processes, and so that's something we're also working on. And lastly, I attended the UMAC meeting at the Schenectady Chamber the other day. UMAC replaces SMAC. SMAC is Schenectady Military Affairs Council. UMAC is the Unified Military Affairs Council, and it's incorporating all of the different local, including Albany and Rensselaer and all the other different reserve groups. So we've really kind of increased our presence and working together with our sister organizations in different towns. And we had a good organizational meeting on that, and going forward we can talk more about that. I do want to thank, and I do want to take a moment to just respond to a few things so that we have correct information out there. I want to thank everyone for their comments, and I think in many ways those young kids tonight, or middle-aged kids, got to see democracy work, so I think it was a good night for them to be here, certainly. They had to sit through a long presentation, but it was a good night for them to be here. I think it's important for people to make comments. I think it's important for people to share their thoughts. Sometimes it's hard to sit there and not take some of it personal. Sometimes it's hard to wonder, where's it all going and what does it all mean? Let me start, my job, I am not unemployed. I don't know where this comes from. And I'm not going to sit here and go into my personal life. I had someone want to know my wife had health insurance through her employer. I'm not going to do that. I was elected CEO of the town of Glenville. No referendum can change that. No salary can change that. No saying you're working 20 hours, 40 hours, 60 hours, 80 hours can change that. My qualifications are clear. I stood in front of this community 3 times now. 3 times. I told this community why I was qualified, what my visions are for this community, what I would do on their behalf. I believe for the past 6 years, I've delivered on everything I promised. Nobody ever questioned my integrity. Nobody ever questioned what my intentions were. Nobody ever wondered what I was really doing with an ulterior motive. That's everyone's right to do, but I ask it to be based in fact. I ask it to be based on something that is real. What we're doing here tonight, and I can address a bunch of this stuff. No, we're not paying pension costs to Jamie after he retires. He comes back, he's no longer going in the pension system, so we don't do that. This is not an extension of my duties at all. I'm not taking on Jamie's duties. This has been a clarion issue for some time now. We are working with Jamie on trying to transition those. As I went through earlier, those duties that I talked about, HR, IT, parks, senior center, never were the duties of the supervisor. Nobody's suggesting that they are going to become the duties of the supervisor. That's part of the very reason why we need Jamie through the transition as we figure out where these go. Ms. Kiuna was already addressed by another speaker. Ms. Kiuna is paid through, that supervisor is paid through the county as well, makes $100,000 between the two jobs, but that was already addressed. Retain Mr. McFarland as a part-timer through the year so he can train me. Yeah, well, that's really up to Jamie McFarland. That's not up to this board. That's not up to me. That's up to, if Jamie wishes to retire, he has every right to retire. If he wishes to come back in the position we're offering, he has every right to do that as well, and I hope he does. Referendum. This board supports a referendum. Nobody has anything against a referendum. In order to get to a referendum, we have to pass local law first. Then we get to the referendum. That's how it works. A lot of the questions that were asked, the technical questions by Mr. Marsh were very good questions, but many of them are answered in town law. They're technical questions. They're there in town law. We can bring them out and put them on the website if we need to, but town law is already out there, and a lot of those questions about how it works and what the town clerk's positions are already delineated in town law. Create a page on the website is a good idea. We've been talking about that, Jamie and I, so we'll be working on that as well. The question about Director of Operations being removed. There just would not be there would be no Director of Operations. As I stated earlier, the Director of Operations, and I don't want to read it again, but Director of Operations basically was created to assist the supervisor in doing his job. There is not going to be a Director of Operations going forward. We're saying we don't need that. I read the comments from the previous supervisor who said you do not need this position if you have a strong, effective, full-time supervisor. You know, checking out my LinkedIn is good and all, but I'm not a social media. She's gone. Okay. I'm not a social media person, so you know I don't pretend that that's my resume or anything like that. It's a quick kind of thumbnail sketch of who I am, but it doesn't have everything on there. It was asked of me though, what is my work experience regarding union contracts and working with departments? I have all that. I presented that during 3 campaigns. Again, I think this gentleman said it, this might be too simple of a solution. This is my job. This is the job you elected me to do. 70% of this town elected me to do this job. That doesn't change. Nothing we do, go to referendum, does not change my roles and responsibilities, my legal roles and responsibilities invested in me by the state of New York. Nothing changes that. This is what changes. I do it. This is what the referendum, this is how simple we can boil this down. That's it. That's how simple we boil this down. Now, if the people of Glenville come to me and say, Chris, we don't like you here. We don't like this. For whatever reason, we like you here. If that's what the people of Glenville tell me, then that's what I accept. But I'm telling the people of Glenville that I'm willing to give you everything I have without any other jobs to get in my way. But I'm telling you, I'm not like the other supervisors of the past. I'm not retired. I don't have a pension. I don't work for the county. I don't have other sources. I'm telling you, if you want me to work for you and give you everything I have, which I would love to do, I'm asking for that. I need to feed my family. I need to make a living. Now we can all, everybody can say, well, it should be this, or it should be that, or it should be this, or some people say that. That's all fine. I'm saying that the people of Glenville had no problem paying the Director of Operations this money. People of Glenville had no problem under the Quinn administration, paying this money for a person who only assisted. Only assisted, was only there to do the job of the supervisor. So I'm not sure where all of this is coming from, all these other issues. If I'm qualified, if I'm not qualified. The people of Glenville said I was qualified. They elected me as their CEO and their CFO. They didn't say, Chris, we're electing you only, and only if you make $19,000, and only if you work part-time. Now, it could be argued that I didn't say to the people of Glenville that if I do this, I want to do this, or I'm going to do this, because it wasn't known at the time that was something that was available. But it was always the model that we talked about as a board. So I don't want to belabor this if it's maybe too late for that already. And I am just a little bit, it's been a tough 4 weeks. It's been a tough 4 weeks for my wife. And, you know, I'm here to serve the town. I ran a good campaign. I never lied to the people of Glenville. I never told them that I'm something I'm not. It was brought up that, well, what happens in 4 years when a new supervisor comes in and all this turmoil that's going to happen? My God almighty. We have a president of the United States that has 4-year terms. He's the CEO of this country. And when he's elected or unelected, this country continues because democracy is in place. We have the governors of every state of this nation who are elected to 4-year terms, run much bigger organizations than us. We have cities and villages and towns. In fact, towns this size, 42 of them across this state are now run like this. And now one of them has collapsed from an election. I do not understand. And as I say, it's hard not to take it personal. I've got thicker skin, and I'm not taking it personal. But I do not understand where this becomes so confusing to people. And all the issues that are continuing to rise up about my qualifications. Mr. Lindsay, you said it best. We had an election. I presented myself to the people. They overwhelmingly chose me and this board. And I'm going to continue to do the best that I can do for this town. And I believe the best that we can do now is to eliminate the middleman, put the supervisor back in direct contact with the people, and let me go to work for the town. If the people of the town don't want it, then I'm fine with that too. But let's get past all these ancillary issues that are not real, that are manufactured, and let's just get on with the business of running this town. That's my report to you. If you have any questions or comments, I would appreciate them at this time. Thank you.
Mr. Supervisor, I do have some comments that I would like to, after listening to everything for the past few weeks. First of all, I agree it's lousy timing, but I think we've done everything we could to explain how that happened and how we got there. With the notion of Mr. Ketchley getting a $60,000 raise, if he was to continue in the private sector at his job and gave a part-time part to the town, and we raised his fee to $83,000, then I would say we gave him a $60,000 raise. That's not the case. We are looking to have a supervisor here 40 hours a week that can answer directly to the people, that they can come in here 8 to 4 or 7 to 3 or probably longer hours than that and be able to speak directly to the supervisor. And that's really what we're looking for and what it should be. This is going to streamline the process for the residents in the town of Glenville to be able to access the supervisor. And as far as Jamie McFarland goes, he's been a tremendous employee for the town of Glenville. He has certainly helped out on this board immensely. We are going to miss Jamie, there's no doubt about it. But as been stated earlier, all of us on the board have careers. This is not our career. All of us have had careers in other sectors. Personally, I was with the Village of Scotia Police Department for 29 years. I served as PBA president for 6 years. I negotiated contracts for the Scotia Police Department twice. I then became, through the ranks, the chief of police for 12 years with the Scotia Police Department. On the flip side now, I was serving, negotiating on the Village of Scotia's behalf for 3 contracts. I have been involved in the hiring of the last 4 officers, sat on the committee for the Glenville Police Department here. We are here to assist the supervisor in whatever expertise we have, and I think that's the way it should be. And I am proud to be able to say that I'm a part of this board. I think we work well together, and I think we're getting a lot of good things done for the town of Glenville. And I can't wait to have this all in place and have this behind us. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Appreciate that. Thank you. Anyone else have comments regarding the supervisor's comments? If not, we can address this as we get down to the resolution for the public hearing. So, item number 9, resolution approving the formation of extension of sewer district 9. Do I have a motion? All in favor of that? Okay, we're tabling resolution 9. Resolution 10, issuing a negative declaration regarding seeker. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Moved in second. Any discussion?
Mr. Supervisor, the town of Glenville is being offered as a donation from Larry and Ricky Lewis, a 7-acre undeveloped wooded parcel that abuts the eastern property line of Indian Meadows Town Park, approximately 1,000 feet north of Edmond Road. The town's acceptance of the donated parcel will result in expansion of Indian Meadows Town Park, and acceptance of donated property constitutes an unlisted action in accordance with 6 NYCRR Part 617 from the State Environmental Quality Review Act, better known as SEEKR. The Town Board of Glenville has assumed SEEKR lead agency in this instance. On November 25th, the Glenville Environmental Conservation Commission recommended the town board find no significant adverse environmental impacts associated with the donation of the property, and further recommended the board issue a SEEKR negative declaration.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, please record the vote.
Councilman Delotte?
Yes.
Councilman Pittladani?
Yes.
Councilman Ramichardt?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Pettsley?
Yes, resolution passes. Next resolution, resolution 11, scheduling a public hearing regarding zoning text amendments. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Moved in second. Any discussion?
Mr. Supervisor, a local law that would amend Chapter 270 of the zoning of the Code of the Town of Glenville is being introduced at the recommendation of the Town of Glenville Economic Development and Planning Department. There are essentially 3 zoning text amendments being proposed, which can be summarized as following. Number 1, establish that agricultural activities, farms, roadside produce stands, and bike paths will be permitted by right within the riverfront recreational commercial zoning district. Number 2, allow the height of cell towers to be increased by up to 10% without the need for the site plan review per recently adopted federal law. Number 3, correct the conflict regarding the regulation of auto repair facilities within the Research, Development, and Technology zoning district. New York State Town Law and Code of the Town of Glenville require a public hearing by the town board before an amendment to the zoning regulations may be adopted. Be resolved that the town board of the Town of Glenville hereby schedules a public hearing for Wednesday, December 18, 2013, at 7:30 or soon thereafter, as the matter can be reached at the Town of Glenville Municipal Center.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, please record the vote.
Councilman Delotte?
Yes.
Councilman Pittladani?
Yes.
Councilman Ramichardt?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Pettsley?
Yes, resolution passes. Next, resolution 12, scheduling a public hearing for December 18th to consider proposed zoning map amendment. Do I have a motion?
So
Do
moved.
I have a second?
Second?
Moved in second. Any discussion?
Mr. Supervisor, a zoning map amendment application has been submitted by the Town of Glenville to change the zoning designation of 13 parcels along Route 50 from professional residential to community business. The 13 properties totaling 12 acres all front the west side of Route 50 from the second parcel south of McDonald's to and including the vacant property on the southwest corner of Route 50 and Oak Hill Drive. The tax numbers, and there's various of them here. The zoning map amendment is being offered in part in reaction to a proposal that would result in construction of a 6,000 square foot retail building at 233 Saratoga Road, and in part to increase the commercial development potential of these properties in recognition that there already exists community business zoning immediately south of these properties under consideration for zoning, as well as more intense general business zoning immediately north east of the 233 Saratoga Road. Whereby New York State Town Law and the Code of the Town of Glenville require public hearing by the Town Board. Be resolved that the Town Board of Town of Glenville hereby schedule a public hearing for Wednesday, December 18, 2013 at 7:30 for this matter.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, please record the vote.
Councilman Dewan?
Yes.
Councilman Pittavani?
Yes.
Councilman Ramichardt?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Pettsley?
Yes, resolution passes. Next, resolution 13 is tabled. So we'll move to our add-ons. And we'll do add-on number 1, resolution authorizing the purchase of a vehicle. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moving second. Any discussion?
Mr. Supervisor, this resolution is a proposal by the Town of Glenville Building and Code Enforcement staff they have 2 vehicles that they currently use to perform their duties, one being a 2000 Chevrolet Cavalier, which has reached the end of its useful life. You can attest to that fact that it's been under the town garage, and it's quite a mess. The Commissioner of Public Works and the Building Inspector are developing request for proposals to yield suitable replacement options for this vehicle. Funding for replacement vehicle in an amount not to exceed $18,000 is available within the approved 2013 budget appropriations. So this resolution is to approve the purchase of 1 vehicle to be used by the Building and Code Enforcement Department, provided that said replacement vehicle meets the requirements stated in the request for proposals, and also provided that the total cost does not exceed $18,000 for the expenses for said vehicle in the approved 2013 budget.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, please record the vote.
Councilman Dewan?
Yes.
Councilman Pittavani?
Yes.
Councilman Ramichardt?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Pettsley?
Yes, resolution passes. Next resolution, add-on 2, authorizing the purchase of a marked police vehicle. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved in second. Any discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Supervisor, the police chief wishes to purchase 1 marked replacement police vehicle to replace a marked unit that has reached its end of its useful life. The purchase of said vehicle is provided within the 2013 budget appropriations. The chief of police has determined that the Glenville Police Department would be best served by purchasing a Chevrolet Caprice model, which will result in cost savings to the town after consideration of all applicable costs and factors. And therefore, we're looking for the chief of police to authorize the chief of police to purchase 1 marked police vehicle utilizing state contract prices, including through options available to the town under the state general municipal law, at a total cost not to exceed $37,000, including all necessary equipment, with the expense for said vehicle charged to account number 2000 equipment and set forth in the approved 2013 budget.
Any questions or comments? Seeing none, please record the vote.
Councilman Dewan?
Yes.
Councilman Pittavani?
Yes.
Councilman Ramichardt?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Pettsley?
Yes, resolution passes. Next resolution, add-on 3, appointing a position to deputy receiver of taxes. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved in second. Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Supervisor, this resolution is to fill a vacant position of deputy tax receiver part-time. ESG panel comprises the receiver of taxes, yourself, town board liaison, and myself. After we reviewed many applications, it was unanimous that we chose Shannon Roselle, 1 Glenville Drive, to fill that position on a part-time basis, effective December 9, 2013, at a pay rate of $14.25 per hour without benefits.
Thank you. And as you mentioned, I was in that interview, and I will say that Shannon was phenomenal. She's going to be a great addition to the department, and I look forward to working with her, as I'm sure you all will as well. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, please report the vote.
Councilman Dewan?
Yes.
Councilman Pittavani?
Yes.
Councilman Ramichardt?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Pettsley?
Yes, resolution passes. Next add-on resolution is resolution 4, calling for the continuation of the local law. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Just for discussion, let me quickly read it so everybody knows exactly what's going on. Local law being proposed, whereas the local law being proposed is local law number 8 of 2013, a local law to add to the chapter 6 of the town code, town of Glenville, town supervisor, and setting the salary of the town supervisor for calendar year 2014 at $83,000, a copy of which is attached was introduced at a meeting by the members of the town board of the town of Glenville. And whereas the town board wishes to continue the public hearing opened on December 4th at 7:30 p.m. with respect to the adoption of said local law, now therefore be resolved that the public hearing shall be reconvened by the town board of the town of Glenville with respect to the adoption of the aforesaid local law at 7:30 p.m. on December 18th, 2013, at the Glenville Municipal Center, 18 Glenville Ridge Road, Glenville, New York. And it is further resolved that the town clerk shall hereby authorize and direct to cause public notice of said hearing continuance to be given as provided by the law. What I want to point out, there's been a lot of talk about process, and speed, and how quick. This board has gone out of its way to invite the public into this process. For 4 weeks now, we've given the public 4 opportunities, 2 of which were not required by law, not compelled to do, but this board wanted to make sure we did everything we could to get as much input from the residents as possible. Holding this public hearing open is an example of that. Having a Q&A public forum where many of the critics of this proposal did not come to ask questions is another example of that. We have gone out of our way. Calling the media a week before this board was going to even consider a budget amendment, asking them to publish it immediately is another example of trying to invite the public into this process. We have done nothing but try to open this process up. It's a little disconcerting that people have still asserted that we are rushing and moving fast. And this has been 4 weeks now. The next board meeting will be 2 more weeks. It'll be 6 weeks we've discussed it. If we take action, then we've got another 105 days ahead of us. I don't know how slow some people want to move, but we have moved at a pretty slow pace. And I think we've been deliberative about this. I think we've been open about this. I think we've talked about this incessantly. And it comes down to what we pointed out. So I wanted to point that out because, you know, we've been getting hit on it. The editorial in the Gazette has been, quite frankly, I just call it like it is, very unfair in their assessment. And I must say, I was pretty surprised that there was no coverage from the Gazette on a Q&A, when they're the ones that said they didn't have any opportunity to learn about the proposal. So I just think that we've got to really ratchet it down here and start working together on this and move forward together. It's time to move forward for the town. That's my 2 cents on this. Any other comments or questions?
I have a few things I'd like to say, Mr. Supervisor. I'd like to thank everybody that came and everybody that stayed until the end of our meeting. I find it, I'll be honest, a little frustrating sometimes when people come and they want to hear and they have their say, and then before any of us can even begin to try to respond and address their concerns, they leave. I don't think that's fair to the rest of the people that are here, and I don't think it's fair to the board. You know, we listen and we take it. I can speak for myself personally. Every time I sit in this seat, you put me here. I am not here because I did something fancy. I'm not here because I'm rich. I am not here because of any other reason, but I got the majority of the votes, and I was elected by the people of this town. And it's my job to listen, and I do that every single time I sit in this seat. When I was first elected, someone told me, when you're considering a proposal, go with your gut. And if you don't think you're going to be able to put your head down at night and sleep soundly after you voted on something, then you shouldn't vote for it. And I can honestly say, whether it's something small, like buying a car for the building department that they obviously need, or something that's big enough to have people come 4 weeks in a row for us to hear them, they're equally as important to me, because not only did you put me here, but you put us in charge of your money. It's not my money, it's your money. Everything we do is subject to review by you every 2 years, really, because we have staggered terms. So going forward from here, I would just like to say that, you know, I have a lot more to say, but you know what, in the interest of trying to move on, I guess I'll just finish by saying I appreciate that you've all engaged in the process. I appreciate whether you've supported it or not, whether you had criticisms or not that you've come forward, because quite honestly, some of the things that have been said, especially in the public meeting the other night, were they were great questions, and, you know, we're thoughtful and people really care, and that is good. I want to see people care about what happens in our town. So if that means that we have to, you know, if we have to have a public referendum, then I support that. If that's what the people want, that's what we're going to do. You know, if the signatures are there and the process is followed and it's all proper, well, then that's what we're going to do, and we're going to see how that goes. So, in closing, thank you everyone that came, and doubly thank you everyone that stayed. It's a long meeting.
Any other
I
comments?
just want to add something before you speak out, and this is going to be very short. I appreciate the fact that everyone's come out here again. But I do want to point out, the people that are concerned and really have sincere questions, ask us. You don't have to wait for a public hearing. You don't have to wait for a town board meeting. Come and talk to us. But if we get the same people day in and day out come up here to make a statement so it can be in the Gazette, I don't think you really care. I mean, come and talk to us tomorrow, if that's the case. I hope this is being printed, because you don't have to wait. And I'm not addressing you guys out here, but this is what we have to go through. We're trying to educate people so they can understand. And if you don't understand, we're going to really spend some time. But you don't have to wait for the public hearing. You don't have to wait for the board meeting. Call us. And hopefully everyone out there is hearing, because I guarantee you, we're going to see the same people next week come up and say exactly the same thing. So I don't know if they understand, or if they really are truly trying to understand. So I really appreciate you guys coming out here. I really appreciate the fact that you want to get involved, especially young people out there, but really try to understand and not try to create any type of friction.
Excellent. Anyone else have anything?
Mr. Supervisor, I've been side by side with you for 6 years, elected for 4, and you brought me into the fray when you got your first term, when we started the SPED together. So I don't think there's anybody here besides your wife and family that knows you any better than me. And I remember Janie's played referee with us a couple times in your office. One of us was going to kill each other. But in the end, it was all about the residents. And it always has been about the residents. I'm out. I got 2 weeks left. And it's funny, next Wednesday is going to be a very busy day, and it's my birthday, so I'll bring the popcorn. I really appreciate you folks that came and stayed, because what you haven't witnessed over the last 4 years is the majority of those people that got up and spoke, aside from a few that really just got engaged because there was some turmoil, it's the same folks that stand up and say the same things, and it's all about agenda. It has nothing to do with what we're doing, how we're going about it, whether it's right for the residents or not. It's what's good for them. And ironically, after they say their piece, they get up and leave. And quite frankly, the short story is those people were the 30% in the election. They're the ones that lost. They can't give it up. And it's like Sid said, I have a business in this community. My door's open all the time. I never see anybody stop and ask questions. Please engage us. Come to these meetings. We want this. It gets boring when we have meeting after meeting after meeting, and it's those 3 people right there, Bethany, Jamie, and Jason. This is good for us because we're making decisions. Nobody's giving us input. We want the input. So we appreciate your support, and if it goes to a referendum, we're not afraid of it. I mean, that's all part of the political process. It is what it is. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I too would like to thank everybody who stayed, and just because I'm the fourth one to say that doesn't mean it's any less sincere. I really do appreciate everybody that stayed. But as far as my comments, I'd like to see Jay Leno tonight, so I'll pass. Anything else?
He's still on the air. So with that, we've got a vote. I was just going to say, with that, we got a vote.
I just have one more thing. Can I say one more thing? Okay. One more thing, and then I promise I will allow this vote to go. I think what Alan said was very telling as far as the individuals that got up, some of them that got up and spoke. One of them, Michelle Draves, said, and if this doesn't illustrate perfectly our point, we're going to come after you in 4 years as Democrats. Now, if that doesn't tell you that this has been politicized, I don't know what does. And, I sit here, I am a registered Republican, but I am not a Republican when I sit in this seat. I work for you. And I would just like that on the record.
That's a good catch.
Well, we all call it.
Yeah. So with that, we'll take the vote. Please record the vote.
Councilman Lamont?
Yes.
Councilman Pipavani?
Yes.
Councilman Ramichards?
Yes.
Councilwoman Wozzachowski?
Yes.
Supervisor Kessler?
Yes, resolution passes. We'll go quickly to new business. If anyone has any new business, Mr. Randall.
No new business.
Mrs. Beardosky.
I think we'll have a meeting if I do so now.
No one on that side? No one has new business. So with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you all for coming.